So I want to start out tonight by kind of sharing with y'all a little bit about my family dynamic. So I have brothers that are twins that are 2 years older than me to the day. Let me say that again. We have the same birthday, but I'm 2 years younger. It's pretty crazy. Birthdays were kind of a big thing in our house when my dad was when he wanted to splurge on us, because usually he was too cheap to have a birthday party for us. But birthdays are pretty cool. And I remember a year to be pretty special. And you would probably think, oh, it's like when Nick turned 16. No, but it was when I turned 14. See, I have two brothers, and one of them was the brother that always would butt heads with my parents, would always get in arguments, would always try to define my parents and be argumentative and punch holes in his walls of his bedroom. He was the bad kid, not great at school, just the rebellious one. And then I had one brother that was perfect. Everything he did, whether it was school, sports, girlfriends, friends, he did it perfectly. He never made a mistake. And so me being 2 years younger, those are the two avenues that I looked at. I said, I definitely don't want to be like this brother. And I don't think I can reach like his status. I don't think I'm good enough to get there. And so I lived in this weird shadow of, all right, I'm definitely staying away from this side, but I'm getting overshadowed by this side. So I always dreamed growing up for this brother, the brother that was perfect, to make a mistake. And so when I turned 14, he did. He was 16 years old, and my brothers they had to share one car. And so one night, they both had girlfriends, and they both wanted to take each girlfriend on a date. This brother got the car first, and so the perfect brother had to drive my dad's car. And people were like, okay, just drive your dad's car. That's cool. But no, my dad had a Prius. And so my brother definitely didn't want to take his girlfriend out on a date in a Prius. That's not cool. Nobody wants to do that. And my brother definitely did not. So he's kind of grumpy about it, but he takes my dad's car. And about 5 minutes of him leaving, I just hear a crash. And I knew that the perfect brother finally made a mistake. And that I would get to celebrate this moment of my dad finally being angry at my perfect brother. And I was disappointed when my brother came in with his head held down low and kind of like mumbled what happened. And he's like, Dad, I backed into our garbage cans with your Prius and your back window shattered. And I expected my dad to be really mad, right? You expected my dad to be angry and furious, but that didn't happen. In that moment, my dad showed him compassion. My dad showed him love and grace, and he said, hey man, it's just a car. I'm glad that you're safe and you're uninjured. And in that moment, I'm like, oh no. Like, it was his time to get in trouble. But then on the other side, it's like, man, that was really cool. I get to see my dad extend an olive branch, to get to extend the love and grace, just like God extends for us. And that's exactly what we're going to be talking about tonight. We're in week 2 of this series called Wild and Wasted. And we're looking at the story of the prodigal son that a lot of people know. And if you don't know, there's 3 main characters of the story. There's the son that rebelled, that Hannah talked about last week, that ran away from home, took his inheritance, and left his family. And then there's the father, which we're talking about tonight. And then next week, there'll be the son that stayed. And I want y'all to be here next week because we're gonna wrap this story up in a great way, and I'm really excited about it. But tonight, we get to see the interaction of the father when the rebellious son returns. And I'm so excited for what God has for us. So we're going to move forward in the story. And if you're following along in your Bible, it's in Luke 15, starting in verse 17. But while you're flipping there, I just kind of want to give you some background. So this story is, Jesus is using this story to kind of rebuke the Pharisees. The Pharisees were calling Jesus out for receiving and eating with sinners. Pharisees were people who were following the law and knew a lot about it. But because they were so consumed by the law, they totally missed what the law was all about. And that was Jesus. So Jesus is using this parable, this story, to respond to the Pharisees. So it says this, starting in verse 17. But when he came to himself, he said, how many of my father's hired servants have more than enough bread, but I perish here with hunger? I will arise and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against you, I sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me as one of your hired servants. Let me stop there. I don't know about y'all, but for me, I've been there where I've said, I can't even go back home because of what I just did. I've sinned too much. I am too dirty that God can never love me. I don't know if you've ever been there. I don't know if you've ever been to that spot of where I have done way too much for God to love me. But I just want to say that you're wrong. There's nothing that you can do that the Father will not love you. Just like me, when I was there and I said, oh dude, there's no way God could ever love me again. I was totally wrong. So we're going to continue and see what this father says to this son in verse 20. Oh, there it is. And he arose and came to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion. And he ran and embraced him and kissed him. And the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be your son. But the father said to his servants, bring quickly the best robe, put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet. And bring the fattened calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And they began to celebrate. So as we look at the story of the father and his sons, I want us all tonight to look at the story with the view of God. So the father in the story, I want us to envision God. And so that means that if the father's God, then the brothers are us. So tonight I want us to evaluate our lives. I want us to look deep into our hearts, into our souls, and really answer the question of which brother are we? Are we the brother that rebelled and looked for the world to find your worth? Or are you the brother that has stayed? You're the good person. You've grown up in church. You stayed in church. You're committed to church. You're committed to the Father. And because of that, there's now a sense of pride and arrogance that comes with that. Whatever your story is, the love of the Father covers it all. And this brings us to our first action. If you're taking notes tonight, action number 1 is the Father wildly forgives. The Father wildly forgives. So we're going to go back and read verse 20 and 21. And he arose and came to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion. He felt compassion. And he ran and embraced him and kissed him. And the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. The son didn't deserve to be forgiven. He left. He left the family behind. He left the family in the dust. He wasted his entire inheritance He even knew that he wasn't even worthy to be called his son. But then we read in the scripture, the father felt compassion. And he ran. And we have to realize the magnitude of the action that the father did. He felt compassion, but he ran. And in this time period, when this story was being told, men of this status, men who were rich, men who owned property, men who had hired servants, there's no way that men of this status would ever run. There's just no way. It would be like Nolan Wilson walking into a gym. That never happens. Nolan has never stepped foot in a gym. He will never step foot in a gym. If you see Nolan in a gym, you know that Jesus is coming back, so you better get to praying. Because that's how serious Nolan doesn't go to the gym. It's the same way of this man. He would have never have ran. So the fact that he had compassion and he ran, that is huge. There is weight to that. And I think Jesus used that action to show how much love the Father had for the Son. No matter how broken the Son was, no matter how many times the Son rebelled, no how many times the Son left him in the dust, no how many times the Son had forgotten his family, the Father had compassion. And the Father loved him. So wherever you are tonight, I have good news. Whether you're the rebellious son that has left and you're trying to look to the world to find your worth, or maybe you've been to that stage, but now you're realizing that's never gonna fill me up. There's no way that fills me up. So I'm going to start looking into this Jesus guy. Wherever you're at in your walk, wherever you're at in your journey, the Father has compassion for you, and he's gonna run to you. Jesus is wasting no time, and he's running after you. This brings us to our second action. The Father wasted no time. In verse 22, it says this: "But the father said to his servants, bring quickly the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet. And bring the fattened calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." And they began to celebrate. Once the father got to his son, I would have been out of breath, but the father wasn't. The father immediately, instead of catching his breath, and instead of just talking to him, he embraced him. He hugged him. And he kissed him. And he said to his servants, "Go quickly and bring the best robe, the best ring, shoes for his feet. Kill the fattened calf we are about to throw down. The son has returned." He didn't just say, "Oh yeah, like you can be my servant." No, he said, "You are my son. No matter what you've done, no matter how many times you left, you are going to be mine. And I'm going to show compassion to you. And the love I have for you is unconditional." And God has that same love for everyone who has a relationship with him. The Father wasted no time. So why should we? So wherever you are tonight, I talking to a lot of students, I hear them say, "Oh, I just want to enjoy high school. I want to play sports. I want to have the girlfriend. I want to have the boyfriend. I want to do whatever. I want to hang out with my friends. I want to be invited to that party. I want to look cool to this friend group." Wherever you're at tonight, the love of the Father is unconditional for you. And just as the Father wasted no time in celebrating his son, I'm going to ask us to not waste any time either. So I'm gonna ask everybody to bow their heads.